the idea of this podcast is basically to capture inspirational stories from successful business people like yourselves, to share your story and also your knowledge for people who are looking to get into business, or those who are already in business, just to get them to understand what it takes to be successful, or to have that edge or competitive edge in business. So capturing the inspirational stories would really be ideal for the audience. So it's trying to structure it in basically four parts. So if we can capture your story to sort of initially take us through where you've come from, where you are now, and what the vision is for the future, and the journey in between, and the challenges and everything else involved. So probably start with that. If you can just give us some brief background about you and your story.
Okay. Oh, well, where to start? I suppose I talk about a lot about what you end up doing, or your main values in life come from your voids in life. So growing up, I grew up in a single parent family. Sometimes there was only £5 a week to pay for all the food shopping, everything like that. And while you're growing up, you don't necessarily realise that, but there definitely became a point in my life where I realised what I didn't want, and what I didn't want is to be a mum that had to work all hours just to kind of pay the bills, to not have those kind of life experiences and things like that. So when I had the opportunity, I got a job as early as I could do. I was always out there earning money. I always had loads of business ideas, but I didn't know anyone who was a business owner to kind of create them into a business idea. And so for me, that feels, although it didn't really necessarily start my business journey, it's always been there. Why I wanted to have a business, why I ended up starting my own business, and the fact that actually I've always had these entrepreneurial ideas from a very young age. Like I can remember back at primary school having them. And so I feel like a lot of people who do go into business, or entrepreneurs, or have who don't go down the normal job route as such, and maybe they do start with, and I certainly did, there's always probably this idea within them, and then it's about how they go and execute it. So I love the idea of this podcast, because it gives people that insight as to, okay, I've had these ideas, but then how do I make it into actually reality?
Absolutely, okay. So what is it, obviously in business, or in terms of people looking to do something with the objective of, for example, financial freedom, or to make money, there's different routes. You can go the business route or the day job. So what made you go the business side rather than the education, and do the day job?
So interestingly, I hear a lot of business people say maybe they weren't so great at school, like it wasn't for them. Like I have to say that I was one of those kind of nerdy, loved getting A's. Like I don't know, I suppose I always loved trying hard and put my best into everything I did, and I suppose I still carry that through into business as well. So for me, I maybe wasn't some of these normal stories you hear in terms of business, that I did get the grades, but then I decided not to go to university. I then started working, bringing in an income, but very soon it was like, why I'm working all these hours, doing something I don't really love. Like I said, I had all these ideas for many, many years about creating businesses and having my own businesses, and I was just thinking, well, surely there's a different way. And it was when I was working in the public sector, Exeter County Council, I was I came home, and in this newspaper was an event to go to for women. It turned out to be a property event, and I was just there and said, like, there must be a better way. And like, I suppose most people know that investing in property is usually a good thing. Yes, there can be challenges, and it's not as simple, but having this idea of investing in something that can then make money, after you've kind of done the work in it, and it's then continually bringing you income, just felt like a really smart way of doing it, and really then has kind of created this whole leveraged lifestyle brand that I've got as well, and the podcast myself. And so for me, that's kind of where it's all stemmed from, this idea that could you go and invest your time, get educated in it? And I did. I went and got educated in property investment and things like that, because kind of the good student in me wanted to do it the right way.
Yeah.
And yeah, this is now 8 years on since
Yeah.
our first property investment. So
Wow.
yeah.
That's very good. Very good. So, I mean, in your journey, what do you think has been the role of mindset, like being in the right space for
Yeah.
business?
I think for me, people who stay in business and keep going, as opposed to those who might like the idea of it, but actually maybe are more an employee, which is cool, and we need both sides of things. We really do, and really, in fact, we probably need more employees, really. But those people who go out there is definitely a risk mentality because it's not easy. You will have people think you're not normal and that you're a bit mad, and why are you taking this risk and leaving a secure salary and going to create something new in the world. But you need those people as well that take those risks, that go out there. And I think the biggest difference for me, and where I see a lot of people fall down, is that they come across a challenge and it's too hard, and the easy route is to go back to a salary and going back to being employed. And like I said, that is part of that mindset. It's understanding that from the beginning when you go into business, that it's not all guaranteed, and there will be hard times, there will be challenges, and yes, you might be doing something that you love or you're passionate about or you're really good at, but there's still going to be things that you don't know and that you're going to challenge against, and people that you don't want to work with maybe, or things like that. And it's how you get through that. And for me, the biggest lesson of being in business over the last 8 years or so is that I'm not a quitter, and that I keep pushing through, and no matter how hard it is. And the big thing that gets me through is the people in the network around me, and knowing I can tap into my business partner, who's also my husband, the mentors, the network I have. And so whenever there's something I come across that I don't know the answer to, or that I haven't faced before, is going, okay, I'm not going to quit, I'm going to go and find a solution. And I think personally, I've always been very solution focused whenever I was in a day job as well. Like when I was salaried and an employee, I always said, okay, well, we've got this problem, but what is a solution, or what solutions can I come up with? And I think that's a very important part of the mindset of a business owner and an entrepreneur, is to think, okay, there's this problem, but what's the solution, rather than getting so bogged down in what the problem is.
Wow. Do you think, I mean, from your journey or generally in business, do you think it's particularly more challenging or difficult for women in business, or does that apply to specific sectors? What's been your experience?
So my experience personally is there will be some things that are easier for women. There will be some things that are harder, and there will be some things that are exactly the same. Personally, where it can be easier is sometimes, I think women, we talk more, we're more open, and therefore people will be more open with us. We're seen as more maybe trustworthy, more honest. So you get people opening up in a different way than maybe I've seen people do around men, for example. Where it can be harder though is just the number of things I see women juggling, which I always feel, when I even compare to my husband or just other men within my life, I will be doing the doctor's appointments with the children, for example. I will be thinking about the other dependents in our life, so parents and grandparents, to the point where my husband doesn't think about that on a recurring basis. I think it is part of nature within a woman to be that kind of caring, nurturing role. And so we're probably just, I believe, juggling more things on our head at any one time. Multitasking all the time. So obviously that's a great skill to come into business with, like a fantastic skill, but it can mean that we have to step back at times when maybe we'd like to step up and scale and grow, but actually we may be having to think about kids or dependents or the home and the makeup of everything more than I would say I have seen men do. That's not to say that men don't take that role on, for sure, when they have to, and when life presents those challenges, and single fathers and things. There's definitely some nuances. There's definitely ways. There's ways of describing women in business who may be, say, assertive or dominant. And there's words for women that are not there for men, like bossy, like crazy, or like the word might be passionate in men, but like a woman's then like aggressive with it. So I think there's definitely some balances still to be had, but I do think it's getting better. I do think the men I work with are not, they're kind of blind to the fact that I am a woman, which is great in some sense, but other sense you're like, I also need you to understand that I'm also a woman and a mum and all of that. But yeah, it's just a balance.
Yeah, it is. But then picking up on that and the level of tasks that women have to take on and juggle and all of that. Sometimes for some women, probably men as well, actually men as well in general, it can lead to sort of overwhelm. It's like you're really overwhelmed with the tasks and everything. In particular, because of the level of competition in the marketplace as well. When you get to see what other people are doing and the success that they are up to, and you're thinking, how can I get there, or I should also be there, and you try and push yourself more and more. And sometimes it can lead to breakdown or mental health issues and that particular side of things. So how do you, like, personally sort of juggle that as well, being a mom and running a successful business, and you've got a husband as well and the whole family.
The whole thing. So there's a few things there for sure that I'd love to pick up on. So for me, mental health and taking care of my mental health is so important. Having suffered with mental health issues, namely clinical depression in my early 20s, and so I'm a lot more aware of the triggers, my kind of pattern, where it leads to, and so I can start taking care of myself better. I know the interventions I need to take, whether that's some time off, whether that's some space. It's letting people know. So, I used to hide away a lot. I'd go into my own little kind of bubble and cocoon. Now I'm very clear, like I speak to my husband straight away. I'll go and see the doctor if I need to, and just look at everything holistically as well, because usually if my mental health suffering, it's because I'm not getting enough sleep. It's because I'm not eating well enough. Maybe certain levels are not great in terms of, iron or vitamin D or B12. So, that's what I look at, and I would suggest anyone look at that, because I think that's a great way to look at things holistically. Okay, if my mental health is suffering, I feel a bit blue, and it's continuous as well. That's the key thing of the, okay, like, we can all have our down days. We can all have a day where we're not feeling 100% on form, but it's when it's continuing, like, that's when you really want to take stock and kind of go, okay, I might need some intervention or some help here. And there's plenty of help to be had, and there's strength in being vulnerable. There's strength in asking for help. So like, don't ever see that as a weakness or a failure. The overwhelm part, we all get that, and I think anyone who says they don't ever feel overwhelmed, like, I feel like they're lying. Like, they have to be. So for me, I actually did a 5 steps to overcoming overwhelm on my podcast, Leverage Lifestyle. And for me, the initial thing is like taking stock of where you are, what's causing that overwhelm. It's usually because something's out of balance. It's not in line with your values. It's not your priority right now. Maybe you said yes to something you should have said no to, or not for now, and you've put too many things on your plate, and you need to take back control again and say, why am I in this position? Why am I feeling overwhelmed? Can I do something about it? The likelihood is you probably can, and then what can you do about that all? And then the final thing of, like, again, personal things that I'm doing day to day is like, I look at my calendar. Have I filled it too much? Like, having separate out my family time to my business time to then, like, time for me as well. That's getting smaller and smaller, and times that I have to break it back out again. But that's really important as well. So, look at your calendar, look at your time, look at your week, break out your family time. Try not to merge business and family at the same time. Like, the amount of times I'm, if I go to read an email on my phone and my daughter's like, mummy, and I'm like, right, put it away again. I can come to that later. So just I really recommend segmenting, having that, creating that balance in your own life and diary and calendar, and working with your partner and your family to agree that.
Wow, that's really crucial. So thanks for that. Now, what do you think is the role of sort of training and mentorship, for example, in sort of accelerating someone's success in business, from your experience as well?
From my experience, so I think coaching and mentoring are different, and I think training is different again. So I'm a speaker and a trainer. I do mentoring as well. I wouldn't necessarily call myself a coach. I've not had training in coaching, but I've done the thing I mentor in. that for me is the key. Whereas coaches don't necessarily have to have the training or have done the thing they're coaching in, but they will have had some training as to being a coach and to getting it out of the person. Whereas a mentor really is guiding someone through the thing they've been through themselves. So, for example, property investing or creating businesses that you've then leveraged and outsourced. The training part for me, I'd always recommend if you need to go and get that training first before working with a mentor, so that you can accelerate what you do with that mentor, because the mentor's then not having to train you in the thing or teach you as such. They're then holding your hand to take you through an actual then physical real life process rather than the theoretical training, and then they can guide you through actually doing the thing and going through that. And you know, the likelihood, and I think actually a really great mentor isn't someone who's just had loads of success, but actually had some barriers and some challenges and some things go wrong, because you can learn from that, like, and that's great. Then you don't have to go through it yourself. So maybe it's like how they evaluate your business partner or team members, or how you would, you know, expand your team, physical, virtual, or because they've done that already, and maybe they've done some things wrong, and so they're like, right, look out for this. So that's what I would look at. And so that's not to say like I wouldn't necessarily have a coach. At the moment I don't have a coach in any particular area, but I do have a lot of mentors. I've done a lot of training, I deliver training, I've done a lot of mentoring, I am a mentor. But for me, every now and again, if I need to tap into coaching elements, as in as a mentor, you get to know your mentees and the people you're working with, and you know where they know the answer, and they're just kind of coming to you for the easy option. And actually some great techniques I've learned over time, which is very much what coaches do, is to get it out of them, and say, like, you know, what would you do, like how would you do it? And it's the questioning, it's how they do all that. So I'm a big fan of them, and they can definitely accelerate you, take you further, quicker. All of that.
Okay. So